All right, now we get to talk Patriots football as Evan Lazar from CLNSmedia.com joins us, as well as Patriots Press Pass on YouTube. And the Pats, fresh off a 24-6 win over the inept Sam Darnold-led Carolina Panthers. That's Carolina's problem, thank goodness. So anyway, how's it going, Evan? Patriots are
It's
playing good
going
football
well.
now.
Yeah, playing good football, and at least on the defensive side of the ball, really starting to come together on that side, figuring out a blueprint, a plan that they can build as a foundation, and then more from there with game plans and opponents and all that kind of stuff. But getting out of some of the man heavy stuff that they were doing at the beginning of the year and relying on their corners to get to cover guys one on one and on an island and getting into some more zone looks has really ignited this defense and led to two straight weeks. Now, the Panthers are not the best offense in the league by any stretch of the imagination, but the Chargers are a good offense, and they were able to shut them down and shut Justin Herbert down for the most part. And then they absolutely flat out dominated Sam Darnold and the Panthers. And when you go up against a team like Carolina, who doesn't have the best foundation offensively, they have good weapons, but they don't necessarily have an offensive line. They don't have a quarterback. You just want to see what you saw, which is just utter domination from start to finish. They scored two field goals on two short fields, and other than that, they did not move the ball at all against this Patriots defense. And going back and watching it on tape, it wasn't one of those instances where Darnold was just missing 5, 6, 7 plays where you could pull out where you said, oh, he just missed this wide open receiver down the field. There was good coverage. There was good pass rush. There was good run defense. The Patriots really dominated this game on defense.
Yeah, look, it's kind of reminded me a little bit of the Jet game in a way, without the major. I mean, there were the interceptions. Don't get me wrong, but without, I mean, there were
Yeah,
just the plays that the interceptions that were made in the Jet games, which were so big and just changed the game, and it was over by halftime. That kind of deal. This game really wasn't
right.
over until the fourth quarter. Even though Carolina and Sam Darnold did their best to throw the game away over the course of the game, but Patriots just didn't have to do anything. Again, it was one of those situations where just let's not fuck it up on our end. You know, it's almost like the old Patriots. We're playing a team we're going to allow the opposition to make all the mistakes. We're not going to make the big mistakes. Yeah, there were a couple of turnovers on Mac Jones that we'll get into in a little bit, but for the most part, you know, they did what they had to do against a team that's just not playing well right now. And like you said, I think the biggest weakness for Carolina now going into the game was their offensive line. You take out
Yeah.
two of their linemen during the game and a guy that has no confidence whatsoever behind center. And I was shocked, actually, that PJ Walker did not replace Sam Darnold after the Collins interception. I was like, how do you not
Yeah.
replace him now? I just, what's the backup quarterback for if you can't replace a guy that is not going to get the job done? It was so obvious Sam Darnold wasn't going to do anything good after that.
Yeah, I think the one thing you constantly see with Sam Darnold is that his decision making and his ability to handle pressure are just real detriments to his entire game. And it's not Sam Darnold's fault necessarily that the Patriots were able to pressure him on 51% of his dropbacks. That's a
Sure.
huge number, and that's a lot on the offensive line. Matt Judon, Christian Barmore, the guys up front for the Patriots, did a great job rushing the quarterback. But there were a ton of blown assignments, missed blocks, guys just not getting hat on hat, not blocking inside out, just terrible O line play in this game from Carolina. And the Patriots really took over the game with their defensive front. And the whole entire Panthers offense stood no chance in a lot of instances in the passing game because of how much pressure Sam Darnold was facing. But there were a few instances where the Patriots let Darnold get out of the pocket and let him extend the play, even though there was initial pressure. He was only sacked one time in the entire game. So it wasn't like they were getting him on the ground, they were just hurrying him. And once he got out of the pocket, or once he broke the pocket from the pressure and got out and started scrambling, his decision making and his downfield accuracy as a scrambler was just awful. And that's something that usually Sam Darnold can do, is throw on the move a little bit and get outside of structure and make plays when the play breaks down and extended plays. But the J.C. Jackson pick six was a perfect example where they try to run that boot action. The Patriots get two guys, Barmore and Judon, right in his face on the rollout, and he just airmails it over the tight end's head and right into J.C. Jackson's lap. It wouldn't have been a big gain. Jackson had the flat and cover two, and maybe you hit the tight end for 4 or 5 yards, but at least it's not a pick six, sure, right? It going the other way if you just dump that throw off and make that throw. But because Judon peels off the tight end, comes out downhill, hits Darnold as he throws, the ball just is nowhere near the intended receiver. So really a very, very bad game for the Carolina offensive line and a very bad game for Darnold under pressure.
Well, that's the thing. When Darnold has confidence, he can make those plays. When he doesn't have confidence, then he's just erratic no matter what the deal is, and he just doesn't know how to turn it on. He's the type of guy that once he faces a little bit of, poor play early on, it doesn't just turn back around for him. And that's exactly why it was no surprise to me that once he started having problems in that game, it was just never going to turn back around. What I was really impressed with, though, and I know we disagreed a little bit last week on Stevenson. I kind of felt that I thought he looked a little bit better last week. I know that you kind of felt that he still wasn't looking 100% sure of himself. But he looked a lot better in this game as well, in my mind. And he only played 17 snaps. And he had 10 for 62 on the ground and 2 for 44 receiving. Now he gets hurt. So definitely we want an update there on Harris and Stevenson. But there's a lot of football left in this season. This is a big deal for the Patriots to get Stevenson to be looking like he's starting to turn the corner now.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that you definitely see with a quarterback like Mac Jones and very similarly to Tom Brady over the years was throwing to running backs out of the backfield is a real strength of his, because once he's very, very good at finding the matchup, right? Recognizing when a linebacker is in space on a running back or there's a blown assignment in terms of coverage and they're missing the running back out of the backfield. And there's ways to get the running backs involved. We saw it against the Jets. We saw it against the Chargers a little bit. And then obviously the backs had a huge game against Carolina and basically were the entire offense on the ground and through the air for the Patriots. So Max looks comfortable throwing the backs out of the backfield. Unfortunately, James White's not there anymore to play that role. But Ramondre Stevenson and Brandon Bolden have stepped up a little bit here and are getting better in that respect. And also Stevenson running between the tackles, just hopefully, even if he only is carrying the ball 10 times a game, just that ability to spell Damian Harris just a little bit and not put it all on Damian Harris's back from a running game perspective will be key for the Patriots as well. So Stevenson's development's been great. He's in concussion protocol, as is Damian Harris. So there's really no timeline or update for that, other than that they are both in concussion protocol, and you know how that works. It's
who knows.
You kind of have to wait and see, right? If they're going to clear in time for Sunday's game against Cleveland, who also has some running back issues with COVID that the Browns are dealing with. So this could be a game on both sides where they have reserve running backs, practice squad running backs, things like that in this game.
It'll be Brandon Bolden against I don't even know who Cleveland's number 4 running back is, because they said Felton and Chubb, right? Oh wait, is Johnson healthy?
Yeah, I think it's still Dearness Johnson. So for the Patriots, it'll be Bolden and J.J. Taylor, and then potentially somebody that they sign off the street in the next couple of days to the practice squad that might get elevated as a game day active if they have to go that route.
It wouldn't be a pretty game, because really the Carolina Patriot game wasn't very pretty. I mean, when you got both teams, like you said, as far as the receiving game, you had Stevenson and Bolden were 2 of the top 3 receivers. And then you had, for Carolina, McCaffrey and Hubbard and Abdullah with 3 of their top 4 receivers. I mean, this was just not a very pretty, new age NFL type of passing game. But that's okay. If you're the New England Patriots, when you have a rookie quarterback, these are the type of games that you want. Let's talk about a couple of the plays. I want to talk about the play because we have to talk about this because everybody's talking about it. It's like the big, the big story. And that is, of course, what happened with Mac Jones and Brian Burns. And
Yeah.
there were some really, you get your normal talk. I mean, I don't know what happened on talk radio. I can only imagine what happened on talk radio. But what we're gonna play here first is just look. These shows, to me, these are shows like the Pat McAfee show, and there's a bunch out there that get heavy traffic, and all these shows are, even though it's sports, it's really a show for just dudes, guys that drink, and they just, they just want to party, and they're not sports experts by any sense of the imagination. That's all they are. So you don't take these guys seriously if you're a diehard sports fan. And here's a prime example. And this is again from Pat McAfee's show regarding Mac Jones.
Success that we need a quarterback that's mentally tough, physically tough, and can throw the ball well. They got Mac Jones.
Yeah.
What I bet you they didn't expect is they got a scumbag.
Well, I don't know.
They got a scumbag.
I don't know if
they got a scumbag. So, it's funny because later on, like 2 minutes later, he's kind of backdoor complimenting him in the same. I mean, it's like all he's trying to do is try. Hey, look, come watch my show because I'm controversial. I'm saying controversial things about a Patriot quarterback, but no surprise to you that it came from somebody that used to play for the Indianapolis Colts.
I love it. I love it because what it tells me is this feels like the old days, right?
That's right.
This feels like every time Tom Brady or Bill Belichick did anything remotely outside the lines, everybody would jump all over it. It would be the number one topic on every talk show, on First Take, and all these Pat McAfee show. All these national outlets would pick it up and use it as a debate point and a talking point. And what it tells me, and Pat McAfee is the perfect person to say something like this because he is a former Indianapolis Colt. And what it tells me is that people are starting to worry about the New England Patriots again. People are starting to see, oh no, Bill's got a quarterback now, and his defense looks pretty good, and the rookie looks good under center, and maybe they might sign Odell here, and then what? And then we're going to be in real trouble. The Patriots might be back. They might be back even without Odell, and I love it. I love it because that's what it means. It means that people are starting to fear the New England Patriots are getting good again.
That's it.
If this happens last year, and let's replace, I think Cam's the wrong person to use because Cam's got his own baggage, but let's replace Mac Jones with Jarrett Stidham. And Jarrett Stidham made a play like that, and the Patriots were 6-10. Nobody would care.
No.
Nobody would care. But because the Patriots are competitive again, because right now they'd be in the playoffs if the playoffs were to start today, people are getting scared. And if I'm a Patriots fan, I don't get all worked up and butthurt about what Pat McAfee has to say about Mac Jones. I say, good. They're starting to fear the Patriots again.
Okay, now let's check this out. This is, let's see, the name of this website. I definitely want to give them recognition because this was the best clip I saw of the Burns Jones play was R4GE Production. So let's go ahead and roll this. Of course, this is the play. And there you go, right there. There's Jones grabbing the ankle of Burns. I'll play it some more. He's still got, now it twists. Now, the twist really comes because Brian Burns is kind of trying to get away. And wasn't like Mac Jones was the one that was twisting Brian Burns' ankle, and that's the reason why. See, here it is, a little bit better of a view there. It's to me, it's like when I watch NASCAR, and they have these circumstances where there is an altercation between one car and another, and they're going 160 miles an hour, and they wreck. It's just, what are you gonna do? That's all it was. It was, you can't blame one driver or another driver. It's just in the heat of the moment. It's just the way and that's to me what happened there. There was no malicious part on Mac Jones. It was just a play. It's a football play, and it's just a bad deal for Carolina. And it's just, but it's the Patriots. And that's, if it was more than any other team, maybe it could have been 30 other teams. I don't think we're hearing about this, but it's the Patriots, and it's the only rookie quarterback that's having any success this year, and he happens to play for the New England Patriots.
I also think it's hilarious that Brian Burns is perfectly okay. Like, it's not like Burns is out for the rest of the year because he broke his ankle or something like that. He missed like one play or if that, and then came right back. So he's perfectly fine. Now, was it borderline? Was it a little bit dirty? I guess I can admit that the tugging and then kind of the leg whip action that he did to kind of chop him down, maybe he could have realized at that point that Burns didn't have the ball and let go. Because I actually buy Mac's reasoning that he thought that Brian Burns had the football, because if you go into any contact sport, and this is what makes it funny to me that people that played in the NFL like Pat McAfee have come so strongly out against Mac Jones, because maybe Pat, he's a punter, so I don't know how many times he's actually been hit. But when you get hit in a contact sport and you get your bell rung a little bit like that, you don't know what day of the week it is. Like, you don't know where you are. You don't know who's around you. You don't know where the football is. And you're just kind of grabbing the first thing that you see in a lot of ways. And he knows Burns is the one that hit him, right? He knows that Burns is the one that forced the fumble. So I can buy that he thought that Brian Burns had the football. But once he had a hold of him and he sort of collected himself and was looking around while he was dragging him on the ground and saw that nobody else was trying to tackle Brian Burns, then I think you can have the instincts to maybe let go at that point. But the initial grab of the ankle right after you get clocked like that from your blind side, I can sort of understand why Mac Jones thought Burns had the ball and wouldn't necessarily have the awareness or the wherewithal in the moment while it was live and while it was happening to really process who had the football and who didn't.
I could still, look, things are going so fast, I could still say that as long as you do believe, and I think we do, that Mac Jones initially thought he could have had the ball. I don't blame Mac at all, even if he looks up and sees, oh, the ball's over there. I still have his leg. I could still see why he's holding on to him. All right, I still have him. Why would I let go? I mean, I don't think you could process it that quick. Like, if you're letting go a guy that will move forward towards where the ball is, doesn't make any sense, I think, that quickly. I don't think you could process that. So I'm not blaming Mac at all, even though he might have seen the fact that Brian didn't have the ball. He was still holding on to him. Again, because where he got hurt was when Brian tried to get away from Mac. And again, I don't think that's Mac's fault either. So,
yeah,
it's just a play. It's a play.
I love it. Fear the Patriots again, right? The mystique is slowly coming back. People recognize that the ship is pointed in the right direction again, and they have their quarterback and they have a defense now. And the AFC, I'm not saying the Patriots are going to make a run this year. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it's not like there is one singular dominant team right now in the conference, or two dominant teams in the conference that you say, the Patriots could never beat these guys. Yep. They could beat Buffalo. They could beat Tennessee, especially if Mac starts to play a little bit better like he was before the last few games. So, look, it's good to see the hate come back. That means that the Patriots must be doing something right, must be winning football games again.
Well, look, we're going to find out how for real the Patriots are with their schedule. Yeah. Because besides the Atlanta Thursday night game, which again, look, Atlanta hasn't played. It's funny, Atlanta's played awful at home, and they played really well away. But it is a Thursday night game, and Matt Ryan, so anything can happen. And the other games were against Cleveland, Tennessee, and Buffalo. So they've got a really tough road now, and this is where we're going to find out just how good. Look, the Patriots are not going to the Super Bowl. They're not winning it. This is just, I know the Tom Brady, but this isn't even that. This is just all still. There's nothing wrong with this as far as you're ahead of the schedule. And this is great to be ahead of the schedule. Yeah. But you know what's going to happen is now you're going to start having some of those fans that are going to come out of the woodworks that didn't believe in the team a few weeks ago that are now all of a sudden going to start thinking bigger things than they should. It's just enjoy the ride, enjoy the season. It's not going to end in a Super Bowl trophy. but just enjoy the way Mac Jones is going to progress and get better. And then the team, this is about growing together. So in the next year or two, you can start thinking about a Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, I still think that they're a couple of pieces on offense away, and maybe a corner on defense away from really making themselves true Super Bowl contenders, like a team that is top 5 or top 6 in odds before the season starts, type of thing, right? They still feel a few dominoes away from that point. But I think that they're gonna be frisky. I think they're gonna be a tough team to play down the stretch here, especially if they keep playing defense like this. But we'll get to some of the max stuff, I'm sure, in the offense. The offense in the passing game, especially over the last 2 weeks, has not been particularly good. They've definitely been a middling passing offense pretty much all year long. Now, when you have a rookie quarterback and you're an average passing offense, that's good, right? A lot of these other rookie quarterbacks are bottom of the league in passing statistics. So the fact that Mac is middle of the pack is a positive step in the right direction, but they're still not, when they go up against these good pass defenses like the Chargers, like the Panthers, like they did against New Orleans earlier in the season. They've had some issues being able to consistently put the passing game together. So there's still a ways to go there, I would say, in the passing game, and I'm not sure their running game, without James White being a factor, and without the way the offensive line is played, I'm not sure the running game is dominant enough for them to just run the football down everybody's throat, right, all the time. They ran the ball for 151 yards in this game against Carolina, but it took them 39 carries to get there. So this was not a efficient running game from the Patriots against the Panthers. The raw totals look good, but the efficiency and the down-to-down success rate and stuff like that wasn't particularly great.
All right, the one play we're going to take a look at is going to be the wheel route pass from Jones to Brandon Bolden. Talk about this play.
So this is a really nice read from Mac. The Patriots are running what's basically a mesh wheel concept. So when they run this play, you're going to see Carolina is going to have a really good coverage call in the works on this play, and they're going to rotate that safety from the deep half there, and he's going to rotate into the box, and they're going to run what's called one cross. So what one cross essentially is an exchange there by the corner and the safety on the primary read, and when Stephon Gilmore passes off Jakobi Meyers on that crossing pattern to the safety rotating into the middle of the field, he's then going to replace that safety in the middle of the field as the robber defender and then leverage the crosser coming in the other direction. So the one cross movement there in the middle of the field is going to take away the primary read from Mac Jones, which is these two crossing patterns by Jakobi Meyers and Hunter Henry. But the one thing that when you get this one cross structure is that it is technically man-to-man coverage. So what Mac recognizes is, okay, they have it covered up, the crossing routes they have covered up in the middle of the field. I can't go there with the football, but I have Brandon Bolden one-on-one with the linebacker on the backside of this route concept. And with the single high safety in the middle of the field, if I hold the safety inside and then drop the ball on the outside shoulder, I'm going to be able to have a one-on-one here and a clean throw, and he just drops a dime. So it's just the fact that really watching that exchange in the middle of the field between the safeties and seeing Stephon Gilmore pass off that crossing route and leverage the Hunter Henry route, and then knowing, okay, I got to get off this first progression. Where am I going? And going to Bolden against the matchup on the linebacker. It's just good post-snap processing by Mac Jones and kind of a good understanding of where his answers are. And then obviously the throw is good as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Who was that? Is that Shaq covering Bolden?
It's Shaq Thompson in coverage.
Yeah, that's just, I don't know what he was. I think he had his eyes on Mac because he didn't. I think his eyes were on Mac, and before he realized it, Bolden was turning and getting behind him.
Yeah, so maybe he just thought that, Bolden's not going to beat me vertically.
Yeah.
It's Brandon Bolden. It's not exactly prime Marshall Faulk
Yeah.
here. So maybe he thought that if he did go vertical on him, he could still get on his horse and be able to chase it down. And Bolden's speed took him a little bit by surprise. But I think when you see this rotation, and you can see it from the back end really well, is Stephon Gilmore is going to kind of pass off to the safety and then replace the safety in the middle of the field. And the mesh part of it, the two crossing routes, are really well covered by Carolina, and Mac does a nice job there. I think a lot of quarterbacks, especially young quarterbacks, get held up here, right? Okay, my primary read's covered. Where am I going next? And you sort of see them hesitate to the next progression or the next read in the progression, and not for Mac. He knows exactly where Plan B is on this play, and he drops a really nice throw there to Bolden as well.
And look, this is still a very good Carolina defense. I mean, if they have any sort of offense, this is a championship caliber defense now that they have Stephon Gilmore here. So, but they're going to have these games the rest of the season because they have nothing in the passing game, and they have a terrible offensive line right now. So this is going to be a long year for Carolina's defense. But and that's why the Patriots just did what they needed to do, and that was it. They made a few plays, and this was definitely one of them. So,
I think you look at the game against the Chargers. Mac missed some more downfield throws in terms of accuracy. He only attempted 18 passes, but he was 12 for 18, which is a pretty high completion rate when you really whittle it down. But in the Chargers game, his completion rate was way lower, and I think it was around 50%, and it was one of his worst downfield completion accuracy type of performances of the season, the worst, actually. But he didn't have the turnovers, right? And I think in this game, what you look at is first of all, the Gilmore interception. He never should have thrown that pass, right? The Gilmore was in much better position to make a play on the ball than the receiver, and that's one. It is a little bit of a bang play because you're trying to get that rub or that pick action, and you're trying to just kind of trust your guys to run the combination correctly.
Didn't you look at that as Stephon had seen that a million times in practice?
Yeah, it definitely felt like that, and I don't know. It was not a good decision to throw the ball. Then on the Burns strip sack, it took Burns 3.5 seconds to sack Mac Jones on that play. So he's got a lot of time in the pocket, even with the sack, and he gets locked on. One of the few times I've seen him really get locked on to the first read and not progress off of it was on that play. He was locked on pretty good to Jacoby Myers, missed Brandon Bolden flash open on the low part of the field, and held the ball in the pocket for too long and gets sacked. So I would put some blame on the quarterback for both turnovers, certainly. And if he's going to be, I was talking about this yesterday on a show, if he's going to be a sidecar, right, if he's going to just be along for the ride here with the defense and the running game and the coaching and all that kind of stuff, getting them these wins, that's okay. The Patriots are okay with that being the plan, and that was in a lot of ways the plan when they drafted a rookie quarterback and we're going to put him on the field in week 1, was we're going to prop him up with the other 52 players on the roster, and it's not all going to be on Mac. That's okay, but if he's going to be the sidecar, then he can't turn over the football in multiples, right? Sure. He can't have 2-3 turnovers in those types of games, because Carolina wasn't able to take advantage of it, but better teams will be able to take advantage of those. You start turning the ball over 2 or 3 times against Buffalo, the Patriots are going to get blown out.
Who got beat by Burns?
Who
got beat? Who did Burns beat?
So it was an interesting play because Hunter Henry technically was the blocker that first engaged with Brian Burns, and it looked like a chip and release type of situation, but Isaiah Wynn never got out there. He kind of stalled inside a little bit and held inside, and by the time Henry let Burns go to release into the flat, into the pattern, Isaiah Wynn was too late to recover back to Brian Burns. So it was a protection breakdown. But like I mentioned, 3.6 seconds was the time to sack. That's a lot of time to sit there in the pocket. And he was trying to work to Jacoby Myers, who had Gilmore on him again in coverage. But to Mac's defense, Myers took an eternity to get into the route and make a move at the top. And the route definitely could have hit quicker to help the quarterback out. But as soon as you see Jacoby Myers slow into the break and not really getting into the route, not really getting open, that's when you would like to see him move on, right? And get to the next read in the progression. And by the time he gets down to Bolden, who is open over the middle on a little angle route, he gets sacked.
Okay. The one defensive play we want to look at here is an overhead look of a cover 3 scheme from New England against Sam Darnold, which is never going to be good for Sam Darnold.
Yeah, so this is what the Patriots have been running a ton of late, and I've actually asked the coaches a little bit about this week, and Bill Belichick chalked it up to a game plan thing, that it's not necessarily their identity moving forward, but they just felt like the game plan said play zone the last couple weeks. Steve Belichick, who is the defensive play caller for New England, flat out told me that I was wrong for saying that they've been playing more zone coverage than man coverage over recent weeks, and that's not really their identity, and that's not really what they're doing. So whether they're playing coy with me or not, the tape suggests that the Patriots have been playing a lot more zone coverage over the last month or so, really since it basically coincides with Stephon Gilmore being traded and Jonathan Jones going on injured reserve, their top slot corner. They lose 2 of their best man coverage defenders, and then all of a sudden they start shifting to more zone. So I don't think that those things are coincidence. So on this particular play, really not to get too into the weeds of the history of the Patriots match coverages, but back in the 90s, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban ran a cover 3 system with the Cleveland Browns, and they would go against these offenses. Pittsburgh, Miami is one that they mentioned in a couple of things that they've done in interviews, that would run 4 verticals against 3 high coverage, right? And there's no way to they were flooding the deep zones with the 4 vertical routes, and there was no way for them to cover it out of a cover 3 structure. So the adaptation for Belichick and Saban was what's called Ripley's match, and Ripley's match essentially is a match coverage that morphs into man-to-man against vertical routes, but then plays short routes like zone. So the Patriots here at the top of the screen, we can start there. They are going to get this undercall. So the outside receiver at the top of the screen is going to run that underneath route. So that's going to trigger to that side of the field, we're going to play this like zone, right? Because if that outside receiver goes vertical up the field, then Jalen Mills is going to match it, and it's going to become more like a man-to-man structure. So when these guys all break underneath the defense and they don't run vertical stems, they play it like zone. Now on the backside or the bottom of the screen, you can see that outside vertical route and Juwan Williams matching that vertical route down the sideline, essentially like he's in man-to-man, gluing to that receiver. Now, once they make this undercall and they call it zone, that allows Kyle Duggar and Devin McCourty to start looking for number 3 on that crosser route. So number 3 is literally just on the left-hand side. 1's the outside receiver, 2's the farther out slot, and then 3's the inside slot receiver. And against cover 3 structures, Joe Brady dials up the perfect play. Like this play works all the time against this coverage structure. When you run number 3 on this deep over, that forces this backside weak hook defender to match the crossing route over the top, over the underneath part. Now the Patriots do something really cool here. And knowing that that's how it's going to play out, they put Kyle Duggar as the weak hook player instead of a linebacker. So now they have a defensive back in that role that can cover pretty well. And they're able to, with McCourty over the top, they're able to squeeze this deep crossing route. And it makes it a really difficult throw for Sam Darnold. So as we keep rolling it, there's just not a ton of space there for Darnold to fit this ball in there.
This is first down. This is not... This play should never. What Sam Darnold is seeing right here does not say I'm going to throw the ball. I should be throwing the ball deep. What this says is I'm going to dump the ball off to number 20 and I'm going to pick up 8 yards.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I would say that started presenting itself a little bit in the second half of this game. Chuba Hubbard had a long catch and run on a check down, and Christian McCaffrey had a long catch and run on a check down. So the way the Patriots are playing defense right now against Darnold, against Justin Herbert, Herbert's not necessarily a guy that won't take the check down, but they are really concerned about stopping the big plays, and then they'll come up and they'll rally up and make the
Why
tackles.
not?
Now,
When
right,
you got
late
these
in the
young
game,
quarterbacks, yeah.
yeah, late in the game, like I said, Chuba Hubbard and McCaffrey both had, I think, 30-plus yard gains on checkdowns because the Patriots, they got the Patriots linebackers caught in short zone coverage. Dante Hightower on one of them and Jelani Tavai on another. So if there's going to be a adjustment for future team, if the Patriots keep on calling the defense like this and they keep on playing so much cover three, if there's going to be an adjustment, it's they're going to try to throw those little short routes to the running backs against the linebackers in those short zones and try to pick up yards after the catch and beat them that way. So I'm interested to see, because that adjustment is coming. I don't know if Cleveland will necessarily do it. They're not a huge team in terms of passing to the backs in that sense. They throw a lot of screen passes, but not necessarily those true checkdowns. But that adjustment is coming. Some team is going to throw for 80, 90 yards to a running back out of the backfield against Dante Hightower in a short zone. But we'll see how the Patriots adjust to it when we get to that, because right now they are completely eliminated big plays. Nobody is getting over the top of this Patriots defense anymore, and they're able to eventually make a negative play happen, make a turnover happen, and then get off the field and present themselves a pretty winnable chance, whether it's forcing field goals in the red zone or getting a negative play that puts the offense behind the chains and there's a turnover or something like that.
Well, again, you mentioned Mayfield because that's the game coming up, and it would have been interesting for, if both teams were completely, and who knows? I mean, we know the Patriots have a chance to be as healthy as they can with the two running backs, but it does look like, well, Cleveland, both guys are vaccinated, so who knows? We also don't know what's going on over there. Hopefully everybody plays, and it's a really even up type of game because we'd like to see that. And because I don't know what to expect from Cleveland, but because they played their best game of the year. It wasn't even close after probably playing their worst game of the year the week before. Was it?
Sure.
Because Odell Beckham is no longer on the team? Was that a coincidence that they play their best game of the year? I don't know.
I'm saying coincidence on that one.
So, but you know what it is too? It just proves how close all of these teams are in the NFL. There's not a lot of separation, which is why, the Green Bay Packers can be special because they have Aaron Rodgers, or Arizona is having like a special season because of Kyler Murray, even though they can win, one game with their backup quarterback. And that's what's good, I think, about the NFL right now. What we've seen over the last few years is Tampa Bay looks like the closest thing to that dominant mini kind of run team. And that's because they have Tom Brady. But outside of that, even the Rams prove it. Anybody can be beat any week by anybody, like the Cowboys getting blown out by the Denver Broncos. So, but it's also the big difference between winning a single playoff game against a single opponent as opposed to now having to play three really tough playoff caliber teams in the next 4 weeks.
So what I'm fascinated to see in this Cleveland game and then also in a couple weeks against Tennessee, the Buffalo game weirdly doesn't scare me as much as those two games do. Not that the Bills aren't a good football team and aren't a tough team to beat, but the Patriots are really familiar with Buffalo, and Buffalo also wants to throw the ball, right? They're a team that's going to throw the ball a ton. The Patriots are built right now to be pretty good against the pass. They're a top 6 pass defense in the league in DVOA. They're 17th against the run. So what I'm interested to see is Cleveland knows they're going to run the football. I don't care who the back is, right? Whether it's Dearness Johnson
they're going to run the football,
or Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt. They're going to run the football. I don't care if Derrick Henry doesn't play for the Titans because they're going to run the football too when they come here in New England in a couple of weeks. So can the Patriots, and they played a really good run defense game against Carolina this past week, but Carolina had to go away from the run because they were down so much on the scoreboard and they had to throw their way back in the game. So in a close game, in the fourth quarter, you got to stop Dearness Johnson or Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt, and you got to get it. You got to get a stop on the ground, right? You have to have it happen on the ground. Is this Patriots defense capable of making that happen? Right? Are they capable of stopping a really, really good running team that's committed to running the football? Not a team that's going to go away from it because they get scared that they're starting to slip away or something like that. Because the Chargers ran the ball, they had 3 explosive runs and the rest of the runs weren't as good, but they were able to have 3 explosive runs. Again, they had a 75-yard run against the Patriots in that game, and they went away from it because they got tightened up, right? They got scared that they were too far behind on the scoreboard. So I'm really interested to see if the Patriots, in a physical game that it should be against Cleveland on Sunday, can they up the ante and really put their big boy pants and their hard hats on defensively and stop the run. Now, against Carolina, they did, and they also played a lot more base defense against Carolina than what they have been doing in the past. So they had 3 defensive tackles and 4 true linebackers on the field on first down, a loss against Carolina. They had 3 guys on that defensive line, Lawrence Guy, Carl Davis, and Devon Godshaw, that are all over 320 pounds. So they put a lot of beef on the field. I'm assuming that's what they're going to do against Cleveland as well, and we'll see which team can overpower the other, right?
Sure.
Because that's really going to be the question. And same thing with Tennessee. And then you talked about that Thursday nighter against Atlanta. Well, that Thursday nighter against Atlanta is sandwiched in between some physical games. Like, they're going to have to play Cleveland on Sunday and then 4 days later play Atlanta on the road on a Thursday night. Yep. Cleveland is a bruising team. That's going to be a physical football game. So I'm interested to see if they can. That's a trap game in Atlanta for sure. That's a tough road trip.
We saw what happened in Houston.
Yeah,
after the mentally challenging Tampa Bay game.
Right. So we'll see what happens, but I'm really fascinated in this Cleveland matchup to see if the Patriots can stop one of the best, if not the best, running games in the NFL. When everybody in the stadium knows Nick Chubb is getting the football, can the Patriots stop him?
I think Tennessee would have been the worst matchup for the Patriots, because not only were they bringing Derrick Henry, but the Patriots would have had to how are they going to stop A.J. Brown and Julio Jones?
Yeah, they're getting a lot of breaks with the Nick Chubb goes on COVID reserve, and he's vaccinated, they said, so he might still play on Sunday. But if he doesn't play, and then there's I think there's no chance that Derrick Henry plays in that game against Tennessee, because I think he's still going to be on IR at that point.
I'm not even sure he's coming back this year, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. So they're going to miss Derrick Henry. Like, they're not going to have to play Derrick Henry, which is a huge break as well.
Well, it's and then the bye. So the next 4 games, we're going to know a lot about the Patriots, because what they have to do here, I tell you what, with a schedule like that, considering where they are right now in the standings, I think you take 2-2. I really do, because I think 3-1 is asking for a lot, even though Atlanta's in there. I think 3-1, you're looking at an upper echelon team in a run like that. I don't think the Patriots are there right now, so I think 2-2. I think they should be pretty satisfied with that. We'll see if they can accomplish that. So I think they will. I think they'll win one of those 3 tough games. So,
yeah, it's going to be really fascinating. I'm really looking forward to seeing, like I said, they have the personnel, and maybe Carolina is not exactly the best example, but a team like the Chargers, for example, they have the personnel to match those high-flying passing games. Bill has really built the team and from a defensive perspective for the Chiefs, for the Bills, for the Chargers, for these passing attacks, right? For these teams that want to throw the football a lot. Teams that commit to the run and are willing to run the ball down New England's throats are typically the offenses that have the most success against the Patriots.
Yep. All right, we'll see how it goes on Sunday against the Cleveland Browns home game once again after being away for a few weeks. And what are you working on, anything particular? Patriots Press Pass?
Well, I don't have anything to officially say on this, but I do think there is a real chance that we're going to be talking about Odell Beckham Jr. as a New England Patriot next time we do this show next Tuesday. It's just there's a lot of smoke. There's a lot of smoke. I've heard from multiple people that have been right on things in the past. Let me put you that way. That Odell wants to play for Belichick. He wants to play for a coach that's going to coach him hard. And I think he felt like Ben McAdoo and Kevin Stefanski really weren't getting the most out of him as a player. And I think he looks at guys like friends of his, guys like Randy Moss, guys like Cam Newton, and he says, Bill challenged those guys to be great, right? He challenged those guys to be their best selves. Now, it didn't work out for Cam, but the Patriots did a lot of things to try to make it work with Cam Newton. They put a lot of quarterback designed run elements into their offense. They put a lot of different wrinkles into their scheme and into their system that obviously didn't exist when Tom Brady was here. So the adaptations with Cam Newton last year, one of his best friends on the planet is Cam Newton, and he I think he really watched Cam play last year and said, that's a coach that's trying to utilize a player to the best of their abilities. Here in Cleveland, I'm just playing a role. I'm just I'm the X receiver in Kevin Stefanski's offense. And I don't think he wants to just be the X receiver in somebody's offense. He wants to be used and schemed open and targeted and given the football to succeed. And I think the Patriots are the place where he feels like he's going to do it, because the one thing I'll say, Josh McDaniels come out of a lot of fire this year for a lot of different play calling things and fourth down decision making and stuff like that. But you give him a player like Odell Beckham Jr. and a player of that caliber, and he's going to find a way to get that guy the football, right? He's going to figure it out. He's going to put him in a place to succeed. And I think there's a real chance that this happens. And the Patriots feel, I mentioned earlier in the show, that they're maybe one or two pieces on the offensive side of the ball. The one piece that really seems to stand out above the rest is that number one receiver, right? That guy that's every Tuesday when you get the game plan from your coach, they're saying we got to know where 13 is at all times, right? They don't really have that guy right now. And I think that last week against the Panthers, the Carolina put Stephon Gilmore on Jacoby Myers, right? That they were treating Jacoby Myers as the number one guy. So that kind of puts you in perspective where they're at with that right now. And Odell just completely, even his presence on the field, even if he's not prime Odell Beckham like he was in the Giants in the beginning of his career, just the presence of him in the huddle changes the entire equation about how defenses are going to defend the Pats.
Well, look, it makes a lot of sense, because Odell Beckham can't go anywhere, and I don't think any team that does not have the type of coach and foundation that, say, the Patriots have. The Saints made a lot of sense, but look, if they have no cap space, then they have no cap space. But so, or Tom Brady, the Bucks with Antonio Brown.
So the Bucks would be interesting if they didn't have the Bucks have so many receivers that I think he's going to look at that and be like, that's a lot of mouths to feed. I'm not really sure how I fit in. Seattle's another interesting one, I would say, just because Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll, and that's a pretty solid organization from that perspective. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Odell does sound pretty darn explosive. So, I mean, that's a great trio. But I think that if Odell truly wants to be his old great self, I think he's going to look at what Bill Belichick has done with Corey Dillon and Rodney Harrison and Randy Moss and all these guys that have come to New England and rejuvenated their careers and kickstarted their careers and say, I want a little bit of that. So give me some of that. If he clears waivers, which he's expected to do, I think Adam Schefter had that report yesterday that he's not expecting anybody to claim Odell Beckham Jr. I think he's a Patriot.
And considering they're playing the Cleveland Browns this week, can you see him actually on the field on Sunday?
Well, it was a little bit of a longer build-up. I think the only real comp that you can give to it was Antonio Brown last year. They signed Antonio Brown the day before the opener, and then he played in week 2. So this would be a tight one, but with Antonio Brown in that Miami game in week 2 in 19, They put him in for 20 plays. They probably ran the same 3 passing plays when he was in the game, and they just said, just go up the field and then we're gonna try to hit you, right? And I'm sure that if he does get in against Cleveland, or if it's not the Patriots, and if he does play on Sunday for his new team, there's definitely a chance that he could be in a package or two where he has 15 to 20 plays that he feels comfortable with running.
Well, yeah, because look, that's why I was saying if he's going to sign with them and the Browns are the opponent, I don't care if there's 30 other teams, but it's the Browns, that he's going to get in there and play as long as everything checks out. And just like you said, even if you just have him in there for 15 or 20 plays,
right,
he's going to want to get in there. So
I mean, I've heard everybody on this end is on board with it. Belichick wants it. I think Mac Jones wants it too, or at least approved of the signing if they were to do it. Now it's all about logistics. Right now, he has to clear waivers. They have to figure out a contract that makes sense for the rest of the season for both sides, because the Patriots have about $3 million in cap space right now, so they can't claim Odell Beckham Jr. on waivers. They have to sign him as a free agent, and on top of that, you have to figure out how to fit that cap number under the salary cap the rest of the year. So my guess is if it happens, it will be reported as a multi-year deal. That might not actually be a real multi-year deal, just so that they can spread out the cap hits.
But this is also, he's not coming to New England to play for 1 year.
I wouldn't think so either. I mean, look, I think that he's only 29 years old, and nowadays he is banged up, but nowadays with receivers, they could play into their low to mid 30s, right? Theoretically, if they're talented enough and they got enough going for them. And if the Patriots have Beckham on their roster for the next 2-3 years, I mean, that definitely changes a lot about their outlook offensively, and they've kind of found that guy that they've been searching for. When he was traded by the Giants, the Patriots were in on it. They had an offer on the table. The Cleveland Browns just upped the ante and beat out the offer, and I think Jarvis Landry, his buddy from LSU, convinced him to come play in Cleveland. But the Patriots were one of the teams in the running back then. I know that they have mutual interest in each other. He wants to play for Belichick. Belichick likes Odell. So this is going to be real. I think this is a real chance of this happening, unless we find out in the next hour that somebody claimed him on waivers.
Okay, so if he's not claimed, then he could be signed as early as Wednesday.
Yeah, he can be signed pretty much instantly if he's not claimed on waivers. So if you see that Odell went unclaimed, then don't be surprised if you see New England Patriots next to his name by, I would say, Wednesday morning.
All right. So maybe that's what we'll be talking about as part of our show next week. But you'll be talking about that one way or another on Patriots Press Pass.
Oh, yeah. If the Patriots sign Odell Beckham Jr., we will be live instantly on Patriots Press Pass. I can promise you that.
When is your next show posted? For sure.
So we're actually doing a show this afternoon. We're actually waiting to see if Odell Beckham gets claimed or not until we hit record on the show, because there's a ton of smoke from the Boston media right now that Beckham is real in terms of his interest in coming here.
Have you been promoting that already?
We haven't promoted it yet, but we will.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Evan. Good talking to you again. Maybe this will be an eventful week for more reasons than one. And we'll talk to you next Tuesday as we record these shows every Tuesday afternoon as the Patriots take on the Cleveland Browns. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Greg.